Hey everyone, it's the year's 1999, back at you with another video. In today's video we're going to be doing something different than normal. This will be my first video where we explore past editions from D&D and see what we can take from them to enhance our modern Dungeons & Dragons experience. And specifically we're going to be doing a two-parter now, looking over the spell list from 3.5 and I guess also 3rd edition in general to see what we can convert. Now, in past editions, spells were at different levels for different classes, but we're going to be standardizing them upon conversion. In addition, we're also going to be learning about some new status conditions that creatures can be affected by. Lastly, some of these effects are in terms of how many hit dice a creature has, but I think that it would make more sense to refer to how much remaining health they have. So anyway, let's dive right in with cantrips through level 4. First up for the cantrips, we have Flare. This lets you dazzle a creature barring a fortitude, constitution, saving throw. What's dazzling? Well, that's a condition whereby a creature is unable to see well because of the overstimulation of an eyes. They get a -1 penalty to attack rolls and perception checks based on sight. Next is Touch of Fatigue. A creature is fatigued for 1 round on a successful attack roll. Fatigued is a condition whereby a creature loses movement speed and it gets a -2 penalty to strength and dexterity checks. In addition, if it gets fatigued again, then it gets a level of exhaustion. After 8 hours, fatigue goes back to normal, but of course with this spell it only lasts for 1 round. Next is the spell Virtue. That gives 1 temporary HP. Then there's Ventriloquism. You can literally just make the sounds that you make produce somewhere else. True Strike, I know it's famously bad in 5e. It just seemed interesting here because it's a +20 on your next attack roll. I don't know, that could be slightly better than Advantage. I'm just going to put it here just in case. Next is Lullaby. This makes people less alert and more susceptible to sleep spells. We'll say this means that they have disadvantage on all perception checks, and when you're rolling for how much health you can affect with the sleep spell, then you only count half the health that they currently have. And the last cantrip we're going to look over is a composite one that I got by just throwing a couple different cantrips together. The first one is Open/Close, so like the effect of Thaumaturgy, you can use it to magically open or close doors. Actually, I don't think Thaumaturgy can close things now that I mention it, so that's useful. Then there's Hold Portal, which just makes it harder to open up a door. There's No Direction, so that way you can know north, east, south, and west. There's a feat for that, but no one ever goes for that feat, so might as well just make it a magic effect. Kind of makes sense since you've got, magic. And lastly, Read Magic. This one's going to be a lot more circumstantial depending on how you want to handle different magical effects and spell scrolls. Maybe if you want to make this mean that it's easier to use spell scrolls that aren't on your list, there's a lot of fun that can be had here. It's just that, there's not really a skill check necessary to read magical effects in 5e, but there's definitely plenty of ways that you can make it work. Okay, now with the level 1 spells. First is Hypnotism. This causes fascination, similar to the way that the sleep spell works. And what is fascination? So a fascinated creature, they're basically just entranced by a supernatural effect. They just stand or sit there quietly, can't take any actions. If there's a potential nearby threat, then they can repeat the saving throw, or if someone's obviously trying to attack them, then that automatically breaks the fascination. And also a fascinated creature can be shaken free of the spell, just as like a normal action. Sometimes you just gotta slap some sense into your friends. Disclaimer, please avoid slapping people.
You are Elastigirl! My God, pull yourself together!
Next is Animate Rope. You get to magically control a rope, and it can also be used to restrain people, barring a dexterity save. There's Charm Animals, basically Charm Person, but, for animals. Then there's Death Watch, and basically this kind of lets you just scan an area to know some information about nearby creatures. You can find out if they're alive, undead, fragile, which means wounded, or they could be dying where they have very little health left, or, just dead. And then there's also neither alive nor dead, such as a construct. Lesser Confusion causes a creature to become confused for 1 round. So how does confusion work? Well, at the start of each round, you roll percentile dice. On 1 to 10, you attack the source of your confusion. On an 11 to 20, you just act normally, so you can do whatever you want with your character. 21 to 50, you don't get to take any actions and you just babble incoherently. 51 to 70, you have to run away from the source of your confusion at top speed. 71 to 100, though, you just have to attack whatever creature is closest to you. And if you get an effect that's physically impossible for your character to achieve, like if you're cornered and you get the run thing, then it all just defaults to babbling incoherently. Yeah, in addition, there's some other stuff, like you don't necessarily get advantage on attacking a confused creature, but confused creatures cannot make opportunity attacks. Unless, they were already previously attacking this creature specifically and then it began to run off. Yes, the confusion effect. It can be, well, confusing.
What about the orb of confusion?
No! Prolonged exposure to the orb of confusion will give you confusion.
Detect/protection from law, chaos, evil, good, and poison. So yeah, scan an area, and you can find out, it's anything poisonous, chaotic, good, lawful, evil. Oh, wait. There's already detect poison in 5e, but you know what? It kind of fits with this general theme. And there's also another spell to kind of dispel the effects of, law, good, evil, and chaos to try to get them further away from you. Mount, which is basically find steed for wizards and sorcerers. Summon nature's ally, where you can summon a beast to fight for you. Hide from undead. There's hide from undead, which makes it so that way undead cannot see, hear, or smell you. This also protects from things like blind sense and tremor sense, which is very good. And it automatically affects lesser undead, but something intelligent like a lich can make a wisdom save to resist it. There's Magic Fang, which lets your teeth magically become +1 weapons. Now moving up to level 2, Chill Metal, which is basically like heat metal, but cold instead of fire. Then there's Desecrate versus Consecrate. And these spells basically imbue an area with energy to buff or debuff an undead. Then there's Rage. Basically, this lets you simulate a barbarian rage, but no, the effect doesn't automatically end because you're concentrating on a spell. Instead, the way this is interpreted for a wizard is that, the only spell that they can concentrate on is this specific one. And if you want to also say that they can't cast any other spells, then that would also make sense. Solid Fog. Basically, it's the fog spell, but it also slows down the creatures and gives attack penalties to anyone in the area. So then there's Fire Trap, Snare, and Phantom Trap. These are basically, magical traps. Then there's Make Whole, which is basically mending, but it's much more powerful. And then Remove Paralysis, which, as you can imagine, cures paralysis. Warp Wood lets you manipulate wood and damage wooden weapons. Now for level 3. Then there's Tree Shape. Lets you turn into a tree. Pretty powerful.
Nose! Look out, he's got a nose! You gotta help me, man. My tie is evil and it's gonna kill me. Please don't. What the hell is wrong with you? Tree power. Somebody help. Hey man, what the hell is wrong with you? Level up. Somebody help me, I'm being robbed. I'll save you. Tree powers activate.
Slumber, which is basically just a much more powerful version of sleep. Anti-plant shell, which basically gives you an invisible barrier to protect you against plant monsters. Airwalk, which lets you fly around. Level 4, Dwemer of Transference. So basically, this lets you convert between psionic abilities and spell slots, but with 5e, psionics didn't really take off the way that they were meant to. So instead, this might be key to spell slots or something like that. Or maybe this lets, players share resources like this among themselves. Like the wizard could give some of his spell slots to the cleric. Order's Wrath, which is basically just a blast of thunder damage that dazes any chaotic creatures nearby because of the power of pure law. And then lastly, there's Shout. This one's honestly just such a cool concept for me. Shout, just pure thunder damage booming from your voice and deafens any nearby creatures. So there we go. We just ran through about 40 different spells that you can add to your D&D game. I'll put more information in the description to link to the specific effects about what each of these do. Just trying to give some inspiration and some tips about how to slightly modify them. Really hope that you enjoyed this video. If you want to check out another one of mine, might I recommend the one where I talked about different ways to apply aspects of Avatar: The Last Airbender into Dungeons & Dragons. Or if you want, I run an actual play D&D podcast called Enter the Dungeon. But that's all from me today. Hope you liked this. Put your thoughts down in the comments. I've been the Aries 1999. Till next time, have a great day, and God bless.